Hello, everyone. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And we are reading The Essential Path by Neil Donald Walsh. And we invite everybody to participate as much as you can. All right. And go ahead, Linda.
Okay, so we are on chapter 6, and that is on page 15. The attempts. For a very long time, we have been taking a dead-end street in our attempts to address humanity's problems. We're continuing to do this this very day. To put it in a sentence, we keep trying to solve humanity's problems at every level except the level at which the problems exist. This is because, as noted at the outset, we are not clear what the cause of the problems, about the cause of the problems. So we try first to solve our problems as if they were political problems, because we're used to using political pressure on this planet to get people to do what they don't seem to want to do. We hold discussions, we write laws, we pass legislation, and we adopt resolutions in every local, national, regional, and global language and assembly we can think of to try and legislate morality. We think we could solve the problem with words, but it doesn't work. Whatever short-term solutions we may create evaporate very quickly, and the problems reemerge. They will not go away. So we say, okay, these are not political problems, and that cannot be solved with political means. They must be economic problems. And because we are used to using economic power on this planet to get people to do what they don't seem to want to do when we try to buy morality, we think we can solve the problems with money. We throw money at them, or we withhold money from them, as in the form of sanctions, seeking to solve the problems with cash flow manipulations. But it doesn't work. Whatever short-term solutions we may create evaporate very quickly, and the problems reemerge. They will not go away. So we say, okay, these are not economic problems, and they can't be solved by economic means. They must be military problems. And because we are used to using military might on this planet to get people to do what they don't seem to want to do, when we try to force morality, we think we can then solve the problems with weapons. We threaten, if we do not actually decide, to shoot missiles at them and drop bombs on them. But it doesn't work. Whatever short-term solutions we may create evaporate very quickly, and the problems reemerge. They will not go away. So running out of solutions, we declare, these are not easy problems. No one expected that they could get fixed overnight. This is going to be a long, hard slog. Many lives may be lost in trying to solve these problems. But we're not going to give up. We're going to solve these problems if it kills us. And we don't even see the irony in our own statements. After a while, however, even primitive beings of very little consciousness become tired of all the killing in battle and all the suffering and dying of women and men and children and elderly from the ravaging effects of ongoing conflict. And so, after enough of these in sight, we say it is time to call a truce and hold peace talks. And the cycle begins again. We're back at the bargaining table, back to politicking as a solution. And peace talks often include discussion of reparations, the end of sanctions, and assistance in economic recovery. And so we're back to manipulating money as a solution. And when these solutions fail to work in the long run, we're back to threats and the actual use of weapons again. On and on and on it goes. And on it has gone throughout human history. The names of the principal actors and the types of weapons have changed. The script has not. This is, of course, the classic definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Only primitive cultures and primitive beings do this. Yet we can't seem to, or simply won't, change our ways because we are very used to trying to force solutions in our world. Yet solutions that are forced are never solutions at all. They are simply postponements. The great tragedy and the great sadness of humanity is that we are forever willing to settle for postponements in place of solutions. Highly evolved beings would never, ever settle for postponement after postponement in solving their biggest problems. It is difficult to believe that it was in 1879, in his last public address, that Victor Hugo prophesied, quote, "In the 20th century, war will be dead, hatred will be dead, frontier boundaries will be dead, dogmas will be dead." The Wikipedia entry on this revered French poet, novelist, and dramatist tells us that throughout his life, Hugo kept believing in unstoppable human progress. I would add here that what he clearly didn't imagine was that humans would take so long to gather the courage to face the largest problem of our species head on. We've done an endless dance all around it, with the result that we continue century after century to try and solve the world's problem at every level except the level at which the problem exists. We've been doing the same thing in our personal lives. First, we try and solve our individual problems by talking and bargaining and politicking our way out of them. No one has to tell us about office politics. And yes, there are even politics in our own family and our own homes. If that doesn't work, we throw money at them or withhold money from them, spending wildly to try and buy our way to happiness, or imposing strict household budgets to try and economize our way there. If that doesn't work, we use force, yelling, banging of fists on tables, slamming of doors, domineering discussions, ugly ultimatums, and then the ultimate personal power play. Tearing up agreements, breaking promises, or tearing up agreements, breaking promises, dissolving business partnerships, walking away from the relationships, and ending marriages, all hopefully, but not inevitably without physical violence. Does it seem like it's time to take our blindfolds off and see what the circumstance for what it is, and see the circumstance for what it is? The problem facing humanity today is not a political problem. It's not an economic problem. And it's not a military problem. The problem facing humanity today is a spiritual problem. And it can only be solved by spiritual means. We must, as a civilization, begin to examine our most sacred beliefs. End of chapter.
Does anyone want to comment?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm really upset because I'm Pakistani and I grew up at a time when there were two wars between India and Pakistan, and I was there. And right now, India and Pakistan are nuclear powers, and so is China. So even though the problem with South and North Korea and Japan and the US with the missiles has been going on for a while. This fight over Kashmir is personally relevant to me, and I know that it is a spiritual problem, and I can hardly wait for the meditation because I'd like to see the whole thing resolved. Over. Here in North America, we're very far away from everything, but it is pretty scary.
Well, I agree, Shabana. I'd like to see the whole thing resolved as well.
I agree as well, and I'm sure we're going to read on a little bit for ideas, but America is going to seem a lot closer, North America, when and if things get worse. Over. Anyone else? Well, why don't you go ahead, Linda? Linda, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I had muted myself.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. All right, chapter 7, the belief. Belief is in many ways just a shorter word for spirituality. It's a more friendly word, a less threatening or confronting word, but it refers to the same thing, what we hold dear, what we hold to be our most sacred truth. Beliefs are tricky. They can support you, or they can defeat you as an individual and as a collective. Currently on planet Earth, billions of people, let's call them group 1, believe that our existence continues after this present physical experience as non-physical entities living eternally. They also believe that, that how our existence continues, whether as an experience of wondrous joy or an experience of agony, depends on what we do or do not do, believe or do not believe while on Earth. In their view, we've simply found ourselves here, having nothing to do with our arrival, but having everything to do now with what happens after our departure. These beliefs are, with minor variations, the underpinnings of most of the world's major religions. Many other people, group 2, do not believe that we exist eternally. They believe that their life is a biological incident, the result of certain and particular chemical interactions of others, and that life ends with the termination of their own chemical interactions. They believe that at the time of what is called death, they simply cease to be. Still others, group 3, believe that we existed before this present physical life and that we will indeed exist after this life, with our self-consciousness and our self-awareness and our sense of a particular identity very much intact. They also believe that we are each aspects of the essential essence of the universe, which some people call divinity, that this is our true nature, and that therefore quality or environment of our external existence has nothing to do with reward or punishment. The afterlife will never be one filled with agony, these people say, but simply with joy, quiet inner bliss, and the peaceful and serene knowing of who and what they really are, followed by the ever-expanding expression and experience of this through an ongoing series of physicalizations that are commonly called reincarnations. This group believes that we do not simply find ourselves here on Earth, having had nothing to do with our arrival, but came here quite on purpose, manifesting a physicality with a particular and specific intent that is identical for all of us, the continued education of the soul, but singularly experienced in each of us, according to our individuated modes of expression, even as musicians might play the same composition in entirely different ways. Whichever group one belongs to, far too many humans, when considering their beliefs, will neither concede nor acknowledge the possibility that what they believe may not be totally true and could even be completely mistaken. Their beliefs about God and about life are, as they assert, indisputable, irrefutable, and incontestable. These are, they would say, their most wondrous ideas about all of this. Now, none of this would matter a great deal if we all kept our most sacred beliefs to ourselves, not letting them seep into and affect our collective exterior experience. Yet what would be the point of holding beliefs be sacred if we have no intention of living them in our daily lives and inserting them into our daily experience? We can see how many of humanity's spiritual beliefs, including the non-belief in God and spirituality, spill over into our politics, our economics, and our social constructions of every kind. The problem isn't that we carry our most sacred beliefs into the marketplace of ideas. The problem is what those sacred beliefs are, and the fact that our thoughts about how those viewpoints and understandings should apply in areas of civil law, politics, economics, and social constructions also become hardened, indisputable, irrefutable, and incontestable. It is both the inaccuracy of some of our beliefs and our absolute intransigence as we express them in our public and collective encounters that is producing alienation in our streets, in our public meetings, in our online postings, in our legislative assemblies, and in our homes. I'm going to capitalize the word alienation throughout the rest of this discussion because it is the central, major, and most negatively impacting, civilization-threatening, social contract dismantling challenge of our time. Humans of goodwill everywhere today are begging to know, is any of this improvable, correctable, changeable? Are we in a slide down a slippery slope that cannot be stopped? The answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is no. But if we want the slide to stop, we're going to have to refuse our continual refusal. End of chapter.
Who wants to comment?
Hi, yes, I think this is a really good, really clear chapter, which makes it really simple. And it makes me think how just this week in my community, which is a small rural community in Scotland, there's a church which is run by a very fundamentalist minister, which has lost nearly all its congregation, an enormous church. And the pillars of the community up until this year said it can't be anything else but a fundamentalist church. And suddenly they just realised this wasn't going to work anymore. So suddenly they've opened it up to the community and said, can we actually have it as a spiritual building for everybody to share? And I think this is not just happening here, but in a lot of places. And this is, I think, what this chapter's about for me. Over.
That's beautiful.
I agree, and I think that this is the way we move forward in taking care of one another and not alienating people, is to open our doors and say, welcome. I don't care if you're gay, straight, Jewish, Catholic. I don't care, as long as we can meet in a common ground. I think it's a really good sign. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah.
But what Shabana was saying also about the problems about Kashmir and all the Asian countries, and it's still very severe, the problem, isn't it?
Well, sanctions don't work, but we keep trying them. That's, I think what fascinates me about what you just shared is that they failed, that fundamental group couldn't keep their building going. So they had to resort to letting everyone in. You've cheered me right up because you're living proof of that. But I suspect, Sarah, that your presence there had a lot to do with it. Over.
Not really.
Why do you say not really? I think that, what you're radiating must make a difference.
Yeah, I guess we don't have to necessarily say anything for things to change.
Right. You just being the light where you are, near those people, has the impact. It's like, remember the Heart Institute has that thing where they say your heart energy can be measured up to 18 miles away.
Which explains why you steward Alaska.
Angela, your volume's really low.
I couldn't hear you, Angela.
I'm not sure she was trying to speak. I think something's wrong with her connection. But I could be wrong.
No, you're way, way, way away. I think your volume's just turned down. Like we can hear you, but should I go on? Oh, here's a chat. Oh.
Why don't you just write it on the chat box, Angela?
There you go. Shall I go on in the meantime?
I'll just read what Angela has written. She says, I was just saying that CWG tells us we misunderstand our power. Over. Thank you, Angela.
Agreed. Anybody else? Okay, Linda, if you want to go ahead and go.
Okay. Chapter 8, the refusal. As noted earlier, our most important beliefs are the beliefs we live by, base our decisions on, rationalize our choices with. They are the lens through which we look, and they determine to a huge extent what we see. We tend to see what we put there before we looked. The most sacred of those beliefs for most people are the thoughts and understandings, convictions and notions that have been embraced and embedded deeply within them regarding what is true about life, about our relationship to each other, and about how life itself functions, about who we are and our reason and purpose for being there, about God, including the belief that there is no God, and about the ultimate goal of the whole experience we are undergoing on Earth. These particular beliefs are critical because they fuel the engine of our lives, both collectively and individually. Given how significant the beliefs are, one would think that people would examine them often, if only to see their ideas still feel valid and true. Yet most people do not. In fact, the majority of people do exactly the opposite. They don't closely examine the most dearly held beliefs at all, ever. Why do so many people refuse to acknowledge that their beliefs could contain even the slightest error, and that it might be time to change them because times changed themselves have changed? What is this reluctance about? It's about where those beliefs come from. For most people, that would be those who raised them. Then their extended family, their tribe, their clan, their race, teachers, models, and elders. Finally, they're given religion and their acquired philosophy, their adopted politics, and their individual history. And because these are such significant and personally meaningful sources, much of humanity has found itself stuck in a most unusual place. This is not a place where we find ourselves stuck in any other area of our collective lives, not in science, not in technology, not in medicine, only with regard to our most sacred and important beliefs. In every other important area of human endeavor, there is something we have been willing to do that has made those endeavors productive, fruitful, and enormously beneficial. Yet in one area, ironically, the most important area of our lives, our beliefs, we have staunchly refused to do it. Our willingness to do it in science has resulted in extraordinary discoveries. Our willingness to do it in medicine has resulted in breathtaking advances. Our willingness to do it in technology has resulted in astonishing inventions. And what is it that we have done in every other area of our lives that we have adamantly refused to do in the one area that is the most important, our beliefs? We've failed to question the prior assumption. In science, the very reason we have been able to discover something that we did not understand before is that the moment we think we have found an answer, we have been willing to question the prior assumption. In medicine, the very reason we have been able to come up with a new cure or a miraculous new procedure is that the moment we think we have found an answer, we have been willing to question the prior assumption. In technology, very reason that we have been able to imagine or conceive of a new tool or a new device is that the moment we think we have found an answer, we've been willing to question the prior assumption. In all of these areas, we have held nothing that we thought we knew to be so sacred that it cannot even be questioned. It may take us some time. We may do it with some reluctance. Yet sooner or later, breakthroughs occur because we have finally questioned the prior assumption. But not so in the area of our most sacred beliefs. In that area, we are going to hold on to the original idea and the first version of everything, no matter what. This is what we have been told, and so this is what we know, and this is how it is, we say. Now, if we did this in medicine, we would be attempting brain surgery today using a very sharp stick. If we did this in technology, we'd be trying to launch a communication satellite using a stack of dynamite. If we did this in science, we would be seeking to unravel the mysteries of the universe using an abacus. We need now to do with our beliefs what we have done in every other important area of human endeavor. We need to stop trying to solve modern problems with ancient tools. A very wise teacher once said to me, "Who would you have to make wrong in order to get things right?" As long as you need to continue to make your sources right, you may never be able to right a wrong in your world. We must give ourselves permission to raise questions about our most sacred beliefs regarding life and even regarding God. We must be willing to question authority. Indeed, to question the highest authority. We must be willing to make the daring decision to choose God in a brand new way, in a way we may have never done before, or not to. And most courageous of all, to question what we assume we know about God. So the issue before humankind now is this: do we have the courage to do so? Are we brave enough to consider the possibility that it is our prior assumption about the entire human encounter that has created the daily struggles and the mounting stress that is so real a part of life on Earth for billions today? End of chapter.
Can anyone think of a situation or circumstance where you changed your mind about something and it really changed the way you looked at whatever that something is? Over.
I can specifically talk about when I changed my mind about the way I looked at God. And that was when I read the Louise Hay book, You Can Heal Your Life. I was raised Catholic with, the angry Father God up in the clouds kind of thing. And I had already stopped believing that. But when I came back around to believing in a higher power, really, it was when I read that book, You Can Heal Your Life. And one of the things she said is, even our idea of God has to be someone who is for us, not against us. Because the God I was raised with was always judging and punishing and smiting and all that stuff. But this idea of thinking of that force as actually being on my side was quite radical at the time. That was after I went through many years of agnosticism after I quit being Catholic. And that was how I started coming back to believing in something again. Over. Thank you.
That is beautiful, Mary. Just perfect. Thank you.
In a way, I think this reminds me of how we get older and we realize our parents are, and I'm talking like when we're older in our 20s, that our parents are not perfect, but that they are very much perfect in what they did with us with the best that they could. And we change our opinions about our parents. It's like, wow, my mom's not as stupid as I thought she was. Because we're the ones getting older. And it doesn't mean our parents are faultless. I'm just saying it kind of reminds me of how we try to figure out our parents. Over.
Well, I was one step ahead in that department, Nanette. I used to tell my kids, now listen, sweetheart, look at Dad and me and make sure you don't turn out like us. And they did quite well.
Well, that's kind of funny. I'm sure you'd like them to have some of your attributes.
Nope, they did better than us.
Wow.
You always make me laugh, Siobhan.
I'm just glad I encouraged them. I'm just glad I encouraged them to trust their own judgment, because it's darn true.
This story popped into my head to share, and I don't know that it's exactly the right example, but it's a perfect example of how when we change, instantly everything around us can change. So when I was about 18, I was living with my aunt and uncle in California. And it's kind of interesting. My aunt and uncle really were sort of a mirror couple to what my birth mother and non-biological father had been, in terms of the way the dynamic between them worked. Both women were alcoholics, and the men, who were actually brothers, both were very passive, and pretty much just let these women just run everything, run them, run the lives, everything. But they were both alcoholics. So living with this aunt and uncle, and I was in college, and I was in theater, and so we would be out late. If the show would end, and then we would go out, after that, and then I'd come home. She would be waiting for me. And she would beat the crap out of me. Every night I would come home, she would beat me up. And I was actually going to college in San Francisco. I was taking some psych classes. And after this one psych class where the teacher suggested, you know, when someone attacks you, when you argue with them or try and defend yourself, all you're doing is fueling their fire. You're giving them more. And so rather, what the teacher suggested was that rather than deny yourself or try and defend yourself, just agree with them. Just agree with them. Because it's their world that they're seeing, and it's their world that they're reflecting. And so the very next time I went home, and I came home and she was waiting up for me and she started to beat me up. She had her hand up. She said something. This is how it would go. She would say something. You blah, 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 whatever it was, something I had done. And I would immediately try and defend myself. And of course she would haul off and slap me. So she had her arm up and she was ready. And I just said, you're right. And her arm dropped and the countenance on her face changed. And then she got her second wind and she was like, oh, well, you know, and she thought of something else and she came at me again and the arm was up and she's ready to hit me. And I just agreed with her. It didn't mean, I wasn't saying that she was right. I wasn't agreeing that what she was saying was right. But what I was agreeing was, you're right. You're mad about that. And yeah, I agree. You're mad about that. I wasn't trying to say that what I'd done was wrong. I just agreed with what she was feeling. And again, the arm dropped. We went through this 3 times and she stormed off and went to bed and she never hit me again. And so questioning the prior assumptions, right? We go into these interactions with people and we have what we think are the answers or, you know, the whatever it is. And we get stuck in repetitive patterns. And so this was just an example of how the only thing that I did was I just changed my response to her. It's the only thing that changed. And within a couple of minutes, not only was I able to figure out a way to extinguish the behavior and get out of that situation, but it extinguished it forever because she knew she could never come at me again, because if she did, I was just going to agree with her. And that it just completely broke the entire dynamic. So I don't know if it was 100% good analogy, but I thought I would share it. Over.
It's an amazing analogy, and I'm sorry you went through that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really the key, is we're all caught in these patterns. And when we meet people we don't agree with, we butt heads, and then that energy just increases. And I think I'm going to take that story and try to live it a little bit. Thank you. I mean, when I'm in a situation where I disagree with someone deeply.
Right. Just allow them. Yeah.
Hi, this is Ann.
Hey, Ann.
Hey, there's a short way to say that. It's called "You Can't Reason with Insanity." So anytime anybody comes at you and they're insane, there's not going to be any reasoning with them. So all you can do is exactly what you did, is you just agree, and there's no place to go. When you say yes, there's no place to go. If someone's arguing with you and you just shake your head and go, okay, you're right, where are they going to go? There's no place to go. That's over, by the way, over.
I think this can also work as a parent with children.
That I don't know.
What do I mean? Hang on just one sec. I can't. Um, anyway, like when my kids would try to rope me into an argument, which they were very successful for quite a while. And then I just got to the point where I would say, well, I can see why you might think that, or I can see why you think that. Because that's the same idea, is if you're
Mm-hmm.
go to that, I understand where you're coming from. You don't say, I agree with you. It's just saying, I can understand where you're coming from. And it really takes the steam out of a heated argument over.
So my question is, I mean, I might be Canadian, but I'm Muslim and Pakistani. So they're calling in the Security Council, the UN Security Council, to discuss what's happening in Kashmir. And someone I know said, well, the only thing that'll solve this problem is if Pakistan threatens to bomb Delhi. And at the very last minute, the Indians will withdraw. But that's a game of chicken. And Linda, I'm awestruck by what you've just mentioned, is that your aunt's arm flopped down and that was the end of that. She never again hit you. I mean, the sanctions against Iran or North Korea certainly don't work. They're ramping up their aggression. Do you have an analogy for that now in the context of your aunt? Over.
Well, I think we would have to completely change how we talk with people about these conflicts. Because if one of them is the aunt and the other one is me, what's happening there? Like the aunt saw something. She saw something in me that she didn't like. And she wanted that extinguished in some way. And by confronting me, what I did was I acknowledged her want, right? I acknowledged how she was feeling. I let it be okay that she was mad at me. I let it be okay that she thought what she thought about me. And by doing that, she suddenly had to think something else about me. And so I think that that's really the key here, is that somehow these groups have got to come to a table and go through that process.
This is Megs. I'm thinking about the Holocaust, and I mean, the Jews and Hitler and World War II, and I mean, they didn't really didn't really and said okay to her aunt, but it didn't change. So I don't know. I'm just having trouble taking this beautiful personal story and then translating it into international politics.
Megs, I couldn't hear everything except the very end. So I'll just repeat back what I think you said, is that no ultimatum worked with Hitler and the extermination of the Jews. Is that what you were saying that we couldn't hear? And what you're saying is that this analogy of the personal confrontation between Linda and her aunt cannot apply to international politics. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I said I was having trouble translating it into international politics because I was thinking of what happened there during the Holocaust and the, you know, the takeover of Europe by Hitler, and how the lack of confrontation didn't seem to solve the situation. Did you hear me this time?
Yes, yes. And so what Linda just said was that negotiation is the answer, because then it comes down to a personal level between the politicians. And if they can find some way to allow each other to vent, then the need to defy each other with sanctions or nuclear tests would end. Does that make sense to you, Linda? Is that what you meant, Linda? Are you on mute, Linda?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard. I agree with Megs. It's hard to take a personal story like this and sort of translate it into a political realm. But, you know, just looking at it at the purest level, the aunt wanted to be heard. And when the response was always denial from me, defending myself, the aunt did not feel heard. And as soon as I just acknowledged and allowed the aunt to express herself and allow that to be, without arguing with it, without fighting it, I just allowed it to be, the aunt felt heard. And it allowed her then to be able to take a next step. And I think that really that's what all of life is about. We all want to be heard. And I think at these political levels, you know, and all these different various conflicts, you know, Israel and all of it, you know, the Palestinian, all this stuff. People have feelings and they want to be heard, and they're not feeling heard. They're not feeling accepted. They're not feeling their needs are being acknowledged or met. And it just causes them to continue to fight for what they want. And it just perpetuates the division. You know, Marianne Williams is really on the right track. Let's make love a political force.
Yep. And I myself think, if you all agree, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg of the conversation we could be having about this. And I'd like to continue it next time, if everybody's amenable to that.
Yes, let me do the meditation and we can go.
Okay, because I do think there's a lot more that can be said about this. With respect to what Meg said about the political conversation. Anyway, Shabana, would you like to go ahead and do the meditation?
Yes, I would. Lord God, here we are again, enthusiastic and hopeful, because this message here today is so timely, given the threat of nuclear war and planetary destruction, what Linda and Megs have shared and what Mary has disclosed is that we need to hear and love the other, the so-called other. There is no conflict, it's just love and respect. And we praise you and thank you that Sarah, Megs, Mary, Linda, Angela, and Nanette and I can thank you already that everyone's belief system is being carefully overhauled for the sake of unity and peace. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shabana.
Yes, thank you, Shabana.
Thank you.
And I love you all. Sarah, Shabana, Megs, Linda, Angela, Mary, and Anne. And we will see each other next week. And I'm going to try to post a question onto the Evo Revo page about what I was talking about, continuing the conversation. And if Linda, you could share with Megs, because I think I heard Meg say last week she doesn't get on Facebook or something. But anyway, we can just get a conversation going and keep on keeping. All right. I love you all and see you next Sunday.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Nanette.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Oops, I was trying to